Tell me, can a man simply decide to become a monster? Or does he have to be born as one? What's up guys, Hunter here, and here we are to do a breakdown and review to chapter 261 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is known as the decisive battle in the uninhabited demon-infested Kenjaku, part 34. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to talk about in this chapter, but luckily enough, we have a whole lot of time. So let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. Heading me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up guys, that guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me, and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact. You know, Gaga, you're a slick man. A sick man, but a slick man. Because I made 3 videos. Hold on. Let me double check. Let me make sure I'm not gosh darn quick. I made 3 videos. Back to back to back. One, that destiny was broken. And that Kenjaku had taken over Gojo's body. 2, that Yuta will be the newest guardian of fate. And 3, that this body was not Satu to Gojo. Bro really said, don't worry, bucko. I got you. None of those were correct, but all 3 are. Gosh darn it, Giga, you slick, sick individual. But with that being the case, let's hop into the chapter itself. We open up, and we do get to see that the narrator's hyping up Yuji Itadori. But only a little bit, because we see, with Todo by his side, Itadori drives Sukuna's back against the wall, and yet... So, like, I'll admit, at first, I wasn't happy with how much Yuji got done this chapter, but realistically, it had to go this way, because we see Yuji has... It's not really fisting, because, like, he went like that. What, clawing? I say clawing, right? Like, he straight, it was straight into Sukuna's chest. And now, here's the thing. Either Yuji's hand is a lot longer than I think it is, or there was some force behind that first thrust. Because how? Like Sukuna, like Yuji went in like this. And we can see we can see his wrist right here. So, like, for Sukuna's back to be getting blown out like this from the front, bro's getting back shots while getting front shotted. Like that's a lot. That's a lot of power that's behind that claw. Because remember, it's not like Yuji himself is like perfectly tearing through Sukuna's flesh. Like I don't even think now, especially without this chapter, because I don't think Yuji can actually do that. He's very likely just using the hole that Maki left for him. Because remember, Maki was the original backshot giver, tearing through Sukuna's heart. It seems like Sukuna managed to regenerate a good chunk of it, and now Yuji's like, and then just straight tore through it. But it seems like that back throw, I'm trying to like avoid calling it what I could actually call it, but that front back shot, very impressive from Yuji. And one thing I do like here, if only for the tragedy of it and what it builds into, I like how Yuji, while coherent in his mind, right, like he has proper sentient thoughts. He says, I'll crush his heart. After that, I don't know what he's gonna do. Like, notably, Yuji, you ready to sack Megami, bro? Huh? We still on saving Megami and Clock, or are you finally about the business? Because honestly, bro, you should have been about the business a long time ago, but are you finally about the business now? Let me know, Yuji. Let me know. If you're about the business, you're about the business. But externally, he's just screaming. All that sentient thought, every bit of logic, none of it is able to come out verbally right now. He's legit just screaming at the top of his lungs, yelling in Sukuna's face. And that, quality stuff. But there is actually an interesting little detail here that I didn't notice, but someone pointed out in the spoiler discussions that Yuji may be evolving. And hold on, let me check something else. Does he still? Oh, he doesn't. Huh. I wonder what is that meant to signify? Hold on, let me go to the end. Let me make sure that I'm not tweaking. Okay, I'm not tweaking. It's not there. Hold on a second. And then let me look up Maguna, or just like Yuji possessed Sukuna. Let me see. Let me take a look in a book, reading Rainbow Maguna. Note how Choso's shown here, right? And obviously that's meant to play into the fact that Yuji, he's finally genuine. Yeah, okay, so it's there. I wonder what that's meant to represent. But not on true form. Let me see. It's not. Yeah, it's not at all on true form. Interesting. Yeah, but it's on both bodies, but it's not on true form. you see how Yuji's truly furious, right? Because he's lost Choso, a man who was once his mortal enemy and knocked him down to the point where all of the Shibuya massacre could happen at Sukuna's hands, and also the saving Megami, but also the man who helped take care of him after that, the man who had saved him, the man who was teaching him the ways and was even helping him to the point of this very battle with convergence and things like that. Yuji is going through all that, but notably, look at the line. Look at the mark that's forming. Obviously, this could just be like remnants and like damage. Who knows? It could just be like a splatter of Sukuna's, his own, all types of different blood. It may have been just a mark left when he was eating a domain expansion for a hot 5 seconds. But still, he's developing that mark. The mark that Choso has over his nose. And notably, it's a mark that Sukuna has only when possessing the regular flesh of people. And I'm not sure why. Like, notably, Sukuna does not... And there are some marks that are like this. Like, Sukuna's markings do change from his true form to his original form. But note, we get a beautiful shot of Sukuna's face right here. Well, beautiful's contentious considering how beat up it is. But still, no mark on the nose. And once again, no mark on the nose. Interesting. I wonder what that means. Like, notably, it's not like the mark on Choso innately meant anything. Just like it didn't seem like the mark on Sukuna innately meant anything. Or Sukuna when he was in Yuji Kuna or Meguna. The marks didn't seem to mean anything, but that's interesting. I wonder if that's meant to signify something. Like, a lot of people theorize the reason the extra marks, like, notably in the Yuji Kuna body and in the Meguna body, the marks on Sukuna's arms, they're double circled, they're double ringed. A lot of people take that as, oh, that's the second arm, right? Like the second arm being registered through the tattoo form. And a lot of people took the, let me see, what was the other detail? People were taking the, where is it? Yeah, the double bands that line Sukuna's wrist. Once again, were emphasis to the double arms. Because if you remember, when Sukuna's possessing Yuji or Megami, specifically their original bodies, he didn't just have the single marking on his wrist. He had the dual marking. He had the first one around his wrist and the second one, same thing around the biceps. So a lot of people took that as like, hey, maybe that's a double sign of something. And I want to say maybe the facial markings, because notably they double up. But let me see on true form. Does he have the double facial markings? Or does he not? I can't tell here because he's too beat up. And I can't, yeah, it's still too beat up at an angle. Hold on, let me see if I can find true form Sukuna. The reason I'm so intrigued with this is because this could have implications. Ooh, maybe. I don't know, I'm looking at this. Let me try this image too. Well, it's possible. It ain't impossible. The thing that I'm interested in is what could that marking mean? Could it mean that Yuji's diving further into his connections to Choso and the entire DPW family, hypothetically awakening an even further level of blood manipulation, considering his awakening has only resulted in, like, a baby cleave, which he hasn't really used all too often. He's even using it on Sukuna here, despite having perfect opportunity to grabbing his arm and grabbing his heart. But this could also mean that maybe Sukuna has some sort of backwards connection to them. Because notably, Sukuna manifests that mark across the nose when he's in Megami's body too. If it was just a Yuji thing, I think that'd be more hinting to Yuji's connection to Kenjaku, and by proxy the rest of the DPWs. But considering Sukuna manifested that mark across his nose when he was also in Megami's body, could mean a little something a little boy theorized a little bit true. The idea that Sukuna may have been the original merger, the original experiment, the original proxy that Kenjaku was trying to do in order to create a merger-S being. Because one of the biggest things that I always point out is that Kenjaku saw the apex of sorcery. 400 years passed when he was talking with Kashimo on Kashimo's deathbed. He was like, yeah, the strongest sorcerer I've ever met is Sukuna. And that ain't changing, no time, buddy. So, like, fully, Kenjaku admits he's seen the peak of the mountain, but he still wasn't intrigued with it. Just like he saw the potential of a cursed human hybrid in Choso, but wasn't satisfied with it, and kept doing more experiments and kept looking for the merger. So, Yuji tying back to Sukuna through this marking, and Sukuna hypothetically tying back to the DPWs through their marking on the nose, when specifically in a human form. I don't know. Could mean a whole bunch of stuff. And of course, speaking of things that we don't necessarily have an explanation for, considering how this chapter goes, and just the nature of the story so far, we still don't know what these arms are. Still no. Not a single... And note, once again, these are the only pieces. After Yuji got hit with Malevolent Shrine, And you can tell by the many marks on him, he still hasn't really started healing a lot of them off. Even after getting hit by Malevolent Shrine, these arms do not have a scratch on them. I need to know what they're made of. I need to know where they came from. I need to know this like, gay. You aren't slick, buddy. You gave the man claws and special gauntlets, and we still don't know where they came from, what they came from, how they came from, why they came from. So, there's all that on this first page. Now, you know we gotta hop into it. So, first things first, let me do a little data scan. A data scan complete. One thing I have to give Sukuna. That man had not a care in the world. Like, the fact that he really was just about to just drop another one. Like, he felt, like, I wonder how it feels, too. Like, notably, it's confirmed by the narrator in last chapter that, hey, now that Sukuna's recovered, as long as he waits for that cooldown period to stop, he can cast domains infinitely, even with Yuta Kotsu levels of cursed energy, just because he's that efficient with it. Domains essentially cost nothing. Like, he's not the 6 eyes user, but he might as well be, essentially. That's what last chapter talked about. But, like, how does it feel knowing that your curse techniques come back? Like, does it, like, or at least the burnout is down? Because technically, curse technique burnout, as confirmed by not last chapter, but the chapter before that, isn't the technique is impossible to use, it's just very hard to use. So, like, what? Does he, like, keep trying to light the fire? Like, essentially, have you ever, like, tried to light a stove with, like, a lighter, and you just had, like, a gas stove, and you had to light it that way? Is it like that, where he just keeps trying to light it, and then whenever it catches, he knows his technique is back on, or at least back on fully? I don't know. But he was about to go for another domain expansion. And I will wholeheartedly agree with everyone. Yeah. If this had popped off, we would have lost. Well, maybe, here's the thing. It depends on whether or not Toto would be able to out of there quick enough. Because worst comes to worst, Sukuna could just burn domain, put himself in another burnout state, especially if the domain still needed to follow the 99-second rule. If he's back fully, and he could have just held Malevolent Shrine as much as he needed, then maybe he'd be good, because then he'd just never have to leave. He'd just sit there and wait, and then slowly let everything else recover, and then they have to fight a stronger Sukuna eventually. Or the 99-second thing is still in, and they just come back and continue the jump sequence. But considering how close and connected everything is here, I could actually expect Boogie Woogie causing problems if Toto can react in time. Though this is interesting, it does go to show that you can make the hand sign. You can say domain expansion. You can have built up the cursed energy and everything, but your domain won't instantly pop off. You can have all the prerequisite built, but it will not immediately happen. Because we see Sukuna go to do everything here. We even see Yuji, like, he's like, oh no, as he realizes that he's about to get shredded to ribbons again. But no domain happens. Like, not even the building of a domain. Like, the start of it. Now, you could just chalk this up to Sukuna's output being super duper low, and maybe that's why the domain doesn't immediately pop off. But still, it's actually kind of crazy that you can do all that and still hypothetically get no domain popping out. That means, hypothetically, if you're fighting someone with a domain expansion, and you sense them or see them putting up a hand sign or going for it, you could just stop them. As long as you can get to them fast enough and they aren't, like, actively retreating from you, you could, like, slice that hand off. Or pull their hands apart. Or break the hand sign. Because presumably, it seems like the hand sign is a necessity. We haven't seen anyone... Is that a lie? Dagon. But Dagon's a special case. He used the belly to complete the seal. And I think maybe Higuruma, because Higuruma, he does that. Like, he raises his hammer, and that activates his domain. So maybe those are the only two exceptions I can think of. But with that being the case, that's kind of like a weird soft domain nerf. Like, the fact that it's not instant, the fact that it can be interrupted, whether it be by a break-in distraction or just the not immediate activation of it, there is a startup time to domains. Even more than what was initially already a startup time to domains. Because remember, the initial startup time to domains for the longest time was just, you need to close the barrier and then activate the technique. That's why what Gojo and Mahito did back in Shibuya was so impressive. Because they activated the technique as the barrier was forming, meaning it was instantaneous. It was all one movement. But, since there is a startup time before the even actual startup time, that's a little bit unfortunate. It's not like it matters too much. Typically, if you're getting domained, you're getting domained. But in matchups where the speed is similar and where the proximity of the fighters matters, that could be pretty devious. Someone could lose their hand before they could activate their domain. But with it being the case, you know, We aren't just here to talk about Yuji and his emotions and hypothetical links back between him and Sukuna and all the experiments of Kenjaku. We're here to talk about something relevant to Kenjaku. As Sukuna sees something rising from the smoke. That's impossible! We see a man, with his eyes closed, his hair down, as if he was sleeping and resting within a dream. Only for that dream to be laid bare. We see Sukuna bamboozled. We see everyone bamboozled as Gojo Satoru does not rise. I was right, in a way. I was right. And in a twisted, roundabout way, I was right. That's not Satoru Gojo. Clearly. You can tell by the look on his face that that is not Satoru Gojo. From the mouth, heck, to the nose, to the eyes, and of course the stitches across his forehead. That would not be Satoru Gojo. That would in fact be not Kenjaku or Noritoshi Kama, whatever name you'd like to give him. That is Yuta Akotsu. The second strongest sorcerer of today. Now made, hypothetically, the strongest in history. But we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But with that being the case, we see Sukuna go through the stages of grief in like 2 seconds. As his eye, I love once again, since he lost his lower eye to Yuji a little bit ago, now he just has the big old bulbous eye and he's like, but then he immediately starts laughing. Hold on. Let me reach into the depths for this one. That's not it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't help it. But, well. So that's how you want to play it. My apologies. It seems I've underestimated you. I didn't think you were capable of going this far. Okotsu Yuta. There are multiple things to this. Number one. Obviously, Gojo and Yuta's body is the biggest thing. But, the absolute disrespect of Yuji. The absolute Yuji disrespect is crazy. Like, here's the thing. It's the fact that it doesn't even take 2 hits. Remember, at this current... Well, don't get me wrong. Yuji was caught off guard by the domain expansion. At that current moment, Yuji was wrist deep in Sukuna. Yeah, whatever, I can say it. Yuji was wrist deep in Sukuna. Like, he didn't just have his fingertips, he didn't just have his finger... No, like, his hand was in Sukuna's chest cavity, where he had a gaping wound. And Sukuna, at the mere sight of something more interesting, One Piece's him. And notably, it's funny, because it looks like he swings his hand this way, but Yuji gets recoiled that way. Like, it looks like Sukuna punches, but it looks like, by the effect of the way Yuji recoils, it looks like he gets backhanded. So it's double disrespectful that all it took was 1 hit to knock away this Giga Awakened Yuji. And remember, he's awakened. He has the spiral eyes now. He is truly, properly the king's son, or the king's nephew, whichever you prefer. Son in Jujutsu terms, nephew in biological terms. Well, technically, like, reincarnated nephew in biological, whatever. But with that being the case, the sheer disrespect to Yuji is crazy. He just gets knocked away like nothing. And hey, it just goes to show that ultimately nothing... Well, here's the thing. It's the catch-22, right? And it's the conundrum that Gege's put us in. Either those 8 black flashes and like the 50... Okay, obviously, I'm definitely gassing when I say 50. But those 8 black flashes and the 50 regular soul boundary hits that Yuji's done mean genuinely nothing. And that this Sukuna could have one-shot him at any moment if he really felt like it, or at least bullied him at any moment. Any of the regular hits that Yuji landed were just absolute luck. And Sukuna, I guess, just teasing and playing about, like, all the screaming and annoyance he had, which is, I don't know, just plague, and so you just... And Yuji just gets laid out. We do not see him. This is the last appearance of Yuji in the entire chapter. I want y'all to realize this. The last appearance of Yuji is this man getting ragdolled by 1 hit. He does not show up again. Like, he doesn't even show up in the flashbacks of this chapter, obviously, because they can't tell him because he's the wire. But still, that's the last image of Yuji. 8 black flashes, Yuji getting slumped. Like, realize, it wasn't a black flash. It wasn't anything insane. It wasn't Sukuna pulling out this next level top shit. No. It was Sukuna with one of his... No, realistically, his only good arm. Like, let's be honest. That other arm of Sukuna's is still barely recovering. Yo, all it took was one good... I'm sorry, Yuji, my G. It seems like this was just your fate, my boy. This was not. It was. You were not built for this, my G. You were not built for this. But aside from the Yuji slander, which I find hilarious, and Todo's shocked reaction as well, which implies that he didn't even know this was a possibility, which makes sense. He doesn't show up in the flashback, so it seems like even Todo's caught off guard here, even with his 530,000 IQ. The main thing I like here is twofold. One, Sukuna's excitement. Let's be real. Let's just put you, or even let's not say you, because I know every single viewer's to go. I'll tell you what would happen if I saw Gojo Satoru, even if it was Yuta Kotsu, if I saw Gojo Satoru resurrect when I'm missing an eye, 2 arms, a heart, and my barely functioning lower right arm. And he looks perfectly healed except for the scars on his head, which I know are the effect of a technique. I would be horrified, because this is the same thing that pushed me to basically 0 HP in the first place. All this guy really needs to do is say, forget about everyone here and smack a red and blue together. All realistically, with the way Sukuna is at, unless it's revealed that he's really that guy, all Yuta needs to do to win right now is smack a red and blue together. Unlimited hollow, the whole area. Maybe teleport out this time so you don't get fried too, but just straight smack them together. You don't need to aim it, don't need to do anything fit, just nuke the whole area. Look at Todo, tell Todo to get him out of there, nuke the whole area. You know the range of it, you know exactly how it'll work, you've seen it, you've witnessed it, get it done. It's simple as that. It's simple and clean, no Kingdom Hearts. But, well, I would react in absolute terror considering that's a likely possibility. Sukuna reacts with absolute glee. Because realistically, he's been bored. Even with him getting excited for a second with Maki, and as much as a Maki meat muncher as I am, it is clear that Maki never stood a chance. She was able to sneak him, and that was the most effective she was. She does not land, well, she lands hits. She does land hits. She does full body tackle him and does draw blood. But to be fair, that may come from the gaping chest wound he had from her sneaking him. But Maki, the only person he's been remotely excited to fight, or the only person that's given him something to prove, Gojo was at least a challenge. Somewhat, to the point where he had to think, grow, and evolve. And right now, the challenge has respawned in a new way, shape, and form, while Sukuna does not have access to World Slash. Unless he makes another binding vow on top of the initial binding vow, Sukuna right now has no real way to just casually one-shot this Gojo. He doesn't. The arms are gone. He can't meet all the prerequisites, so he'd have to binding vow on top of the initial binding vow. Sukuna reacts with excitement at the sight of the one man who pushed him to his limits. The one man who may have hypothetically nearly taught him about love. But also, another thing I like about this, Okotsu Yuta. Every single time, I don't know, hey, maybe I need to double check this, but every single time, from off the top of my head, that Sukuna has referred to Yuta Okotsu, it's been as the cursed brat. The brat with the curse. Oh, this, that. Oh, the meal. He's never really given Yuta Okotsu his respect, despite him being the second strongest of today. But now that Yuta, in Sukuna's eyes, has given it his all, thrown away his humanity, stooped down to the level that Sukuna was at, or hypothetically, risen to the level that Sukuna was at in terms of the Jujutsu world, where becoming and abandoning pieces of yourself is what makes you stronger, he's more than willing to give him his full name. Okotsu Yuta. Not the cursed brat, not the second to go, none of that. No. Okotsu Yuta. He is worthy of his name being said by the King of Curses. All that, beautiful. Love the characterization for Sukuna here. No fear, no disgust, no hatred, nothing but excitement and respect. Beautiful, beautiful. Once again, Sukuna, he's done grown on me. As much as a Kenjaku Coper and a Kenny Creamer as I am, yeah, I like Sukuna more now. Once again, this whole section of battle has just been further characterizing him, further evolving him, making him more and more interesting, and Kenjaku's been dead for like, what? 261? Like, we're nearing 20 chapters of Kenjaku's end. So, like, I have to give him credit. I like Sukuna more now. He's definitely empathy. But with that being the case, it's time for the explanation. Explanation behind it all. Now, excuse me, as I try to do editing me a favor, because I know he will be screaming if I don't help out on this one. So editing me, be grateful for this assist. Let's hope it works. But with that being the case, we go back in time, back to reality, and we see this whole proposition being brought up in the first place. And, one thing I do want to address, one final thing I want to address. A lot of people are questioning, how does he know it's Yuta and not Kenjaku? Yo, he had the merger transferred to him. Why else? Why would he think it was Big Jaku? Like, and one, the face. Like, look at that face. Does that look like a face that Kenjaku would make? For one, you know, Kenjaku would be. He'd be big cheesing and launching hollow purples like crazy. Like, if he really had the body. But two, like, it's just a process of elimination. Kenjaku's clearly dead. At least in Sukuna's mind. Once again, I may be huffing the fight, like, off camera right now. There's this gigantic floor-to-ceiling container of copium. Of Kenny copium. The good old KC. And I huff it every single day, hoping that Big Jaku somehow transferred his consciousness to the merger, overriding Tengen, and when the merger activates, it's just going to be Big Jaku, turned into this cursed energy god that transcends the entire system and is going to rewrite the world as he sees fit. On some spoilers for one of my favorite manga of all time, so I won't say it directly. But, like, I could be that. But, like, logistically, from every bit of information Sukuna has at this point, it has to be Yuta. It can't be Kenny, because Kenny gave up the merger. And Kenny wouldn't give up the merger unless he was actually dead. So of course he knows it's not Kenny. That's the only thing. Because I've seen people asking that. A lot of people have been like, that doesn't make any sense. Come on now, yo. Process of elimination. But, hey, and I can't blame y'all. I'm not the sharpest spoon in the kitchen shed either. But there's that. But we go back in time. Back to reality. And we see Maki say, not an option. We can't let you. And we see even Hikari go, Vito, unless if we're all wiped out and there are no other options, do what you gotta do. Do what you go to do. I've seen a bunch of different names. I've seen Gogeta, but that doesn't make sense. How do you even get, there's not an I in there. It'd be Gojuta, if anything. And I guess Gojuta works. But like, and that's a cool title, like, back to Gogeta, obviously. So maybe Gojuta. I like Gota just because it has, like, goat in the name. Like, obviously it's spelled Gota. And technically, a lot of people were getting on my case, and for good reason, because technically, his last name is Okotsu. And Satoru's last name is Gojo. So if anything, if you're fusing names, you have to fuse the last names and the first names. But, like, you see, Gota actually has deep meaning to it. Because now, Gojo is the last name. Because he's last, left us behind. He was the last. Okay, there's no deeper reading for Gota other than the fact that it has Go in it. So I'm going to keep calling him Gota. But I've seen Gogeta. I've seen Yojito. I've seen a bunch of different names. I'm going to call him Gota. Maybe Yujito. Because Vegito. I don't know. I'm tempted. Once again, I'll probably switch up. I like the fusion names, though. But with that being the case, keep leaving them. I love it. But with that being the case, we do see Hikari being like, do what you gotta do. And this is, once again, a big part of JJK that I do like. No matter what, no matter how strong they became, no matter how liberated they become, no matter what they are, with rare exception, they are ultimately all still human. Maki's in it, right? I'll get through more of it before I go deep into the ideas of humanity and who's showing humanity, who isn't showing humanity, what it means for the respective characters, what it lines up with previous characterization from further points in time, ironically enough, for some of the characters, and what it means for their fates and futures and stuff like that. There's a lot to go into. But when you see this nasty, filthy, horrid waste of space, disgusting, ugly, pointless creature that should have fell to Kashimo's hands, I swear. If Satoru dies, Rika can eat Kenjaku and copy his body hopping ability, which would let Yuta take over Satoru's body and re-enter the fight, right? That would raise our likelihood of victory. Haha. You know, the thing, I actually like Mickey Mouse. So I shouldn't disgrace him. Admittedly, that voice is a disgrace. I can't do Mickey Mouse to save my life. Catch me 10 years ago when I had a lot of younger family members who watched Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. And I got hit a mean Mickey. But back in the day. That was back in the day. Now, this is the possibility, right? And I've seen people be confused over this too. How did Rika eating Kenny get the body hopping technique and not just curse spirit manipulation? Didn't he eat the body of Kenny? Very specifically, we don't see it, but I'm assuming Rika, right after Yuta pierced the head, what he likely did was throw it down and Rika just went, Because remember, the technique is stored within the brain. That's likely where the mouth comes from, all the stitches and stuff like that. Rika likely ate Geto's or Kenjaku's head. Meaning, likely enough, Rika may have not gotten just one technique, but she may have actually gotten 3, if you think the remnants of the anti-gravity engine also exists within Kenny's head, which is entirely possible. So Rika / Yuta may have gotten the body hopping technique of Kenjaku through specifically eating the brain, which makes sense. Cursed spirit manipulation by also specifically eating the brain or the body of Sukuna Geto, because we know Yuta's copy technique, while it's based on eating part of a person, it does not have to specifically be their brain, because we've seen him eat pieces of Charles, and Charles is still alive. Well, we haven't seen him eat pieces of Charles, but he has future sight, meaning he ate a piece of Charles, and Charles is still alive. He ate Sukuna's finger, that's why he got cleaved. He didn't eat Sukuna's brain. And Inumaki, obviously, Inumaki still has a brain. So that means you don't have to eat the brain, but all the biological pieces of cursed spirit manipulation are there. It's just likely that he doesn't have any reason to use it, because he have to go out and collect the curses themselves. Cursed spirit manipulation is a stockpile kind of ability, not necessarily a uniform ability that one has innately. You'd have to go out and eat them, and Yuta clearly didn't have the time for that. But the anti-gravity engine could be useful. That could be very, very useful if they know about it, if Choso told them about that. And notably, he wouldn't even know the name of it. So Yuta would kind of just have to figure that one out on his own, which may not be possible. I highly doubt Tengen or Choso was recording the fight with Kenjaku. So I highly doubt Yuta's going to have access to it, or at least know what it is, but it could be there as well. So Yuta may have gotten 3 for the price of 1 by eating Sukuna Geto / Kenjaku's head, which is pretty good. A nice little steal right there. But with that being the case, this is ultimately the plan if Gojo fell. If Gojo failed. Of course, this is a last resort kind of thing, right? They wouldn't just do this, but yeah, they know what they need to do. And we see that once again, I do like this from Kusakabe. He's thinking rather logically. Can he just use Gojo's corpse and go into Limitless? But Shoko explains he wouldn't be able to use it without the 6 eyes. And then Kusakabe's like, well, then just copy the 6 eyes. And we see Shoko explain he can't. They're a physical attribute, not a technique. Now, this is interesting. They're a physical attribute, not a technique. That is confirmed. 100%. Good. Sometimes they're listed as a cursed technique, sometimes they're not. Cursed jutsu trait. There we go. Physical. The next question Kusakabe should have asked, and I do kind of wish we got an answer for, why not just rip them out? And then, right? Maybe I'm crazy, but we know that, but then again, maybe it's a case they'll shut down, they'll stop being the 6 eyes if you pluck them out of Gojo's body. Once again, the whole there can only be one 6 eyes user at a time thing is weird. Because it's clear that you can still access them after the original user of the 6 eyes dies, as we see with this chapter. Those eyes are unmistakable. Gojo / Goda does have access to the 6 eyes still, in spite of Gojo passing away, meaning they don't just poof out of existence. So, why couldn't you just pop them out? And before y'all hit me with the, pencil, man, this ain't Naruto, you can't just do that. I mean, why not, though? Why not, though? You mean to tell me the body hopping technique works, but you can't just pop them out? Obviously, I still get going to... Well, actually, not really. Because here's the thing, right? Hold on, I'm about to do some actual weird research. Can you transplant eyes? I highly doubt it, though. Can you transplant eyes? Googler, don't fail me now. Surgeons have performed the first transplant of an entire human eye, an extraordinary addition to a face transplant, although it's far too soon to know if the man will ever see through his new left eye. Okay. So it's unlikely, at least based on human scientific stuff. Ooh, why are you in my... Leave. Vanish. Vanish. I'm begging. Leave. There we go. And that was in 2023. This takes place in 2018. So, clearly it's not... You healthy clear. Okay, I'm seeing different parts. There are currently no way to transplant an entire eye. Okay, so technically it can't happen based on the time period. So that makes sense. It makes sense why they don't just Naruto it just tear the eyes out and put them in. Though hypothetically, maybe they should have tried that, because if they had just given you to the 6 eyes, no, because the thing is, he'd still have the 5-minute time limit outside of the domain. He'd still need to use the domain. But then again, if he had the 6 eyes themselves, he could just infinitely span his domain. He just had to wait for the cooldown or risk it and like do only 3 times the domain refresh. Like technically, there are still ways if they could have just transplanted the eyes, but once again, maybe that'll play into the whole like Destiny thing where you can't just remove the eyes. The second you go to remove the eyes from the Destin 6 eyes user, they just become worthless. Even if Yuta could hypothetically have his own eyes torn out, you place the new ones in and then he spams RCT to the max in order to fuse them back into his system. Maybe that's it. I'm shocked Kusakabe doesn't bring that up, though. But with that being the case, we see that Maki's like, Yuta can only use his copy technique while Rika is fully manifested, which only lasts 5 minutes. What happens when those 5 minutes are up? So, we'll still save it. We see that Yuta fully admits, I don't really know like that for real. It's a gamble that they just need to take at that point. Because presumably, well, we'll get to it. Once again, I'll read through this whole section, and then I'll go piece by piece on things I want to talk about. I don't know. There are 3 likely possibilities. 1, Kenjaku's ability requires constant activation. In that case, the body and the soul won't be able to be maintained, and he'll die. 2, Kenjaku's ability is activated intermittently, meaning he won't immediately, but it'll be a matter of time before he dies. 3, Kenjaku's ability need only be activated once. Even after the 5 minutes, he'll be able to use the Limitless technique. I suppose that would include the possibility of disposing of Akotsu-san's original body, as he forever remains inside Gojo-kun's. So, okay, I want to read through the whole section. How much longer do I won't read through the whole section. I want to go piece by piece. But I won't talk about Maki just yet, because I believe she talks later. Yeah, she talks later. Okay, so we'll go into the Maki beast in a little bit. But these 3 possibilities, let me rank them in order of likelihood. Number 1, constant activation. Least likely. No, I don't think so. I think that's the least likely one. Mainly because we've seen Kenjaku go through curse technique burnout. Now, we know burnout doesn't mean a technique is impossible to use, but if it was constant activation, Kenny would like go on a shutdown period. Like he would straight plop over if he closed his domain afterwards because he'd be in cooldown. But we've seen him do that against Choso and he was fine. So I don't think it's a constant activation type. Plus, it kind of just wouldn't make sense because like I guess you'd have to keep it on 24/7, like even while sleeping. Like if he still needs sleep. I mean, presumably he still needs sleep, but that's the thing. I don't think it's a constant activation type. That's the darkest scenario, which means that the moment the 5 minutes is up, Yuta just plops over, but I don't think that's likely. The second one, also the second least likely. Mainly because, like, unless there was, like, a binding valve, I don't get why it would be intermittent like that. Like, why would the brain just randomly desync? Like, you'd just be like, oh, like, how do I put this? Imagine you're running software, right? And then every once in a while, like for your phone, every once in a while the software needs to update. Why would it need to do that for a body? Like, the body's consistently running updates as it is. Cells are constantly dying and then being reborn and split and freshly. Like, I don't think if there was any need for an intermittent update, it would just be like the first type. And I don't think that's likely. Third type is what's most likely in my opinion. I just think it's a fusion type thing. Because we've seen that the stitches do vary in their age and efficacy the longer Kenjaku's been in the body. With Geto's body, which is a recent acquirement, it's only, I think, like a year old at the time of the modern series. It still has relatively fresh stitches to the point where you can see them clearly on Geto's head. But with Kaori, who presumably was, you know, living as Kaori for quite a bit now, the stitches had faded. They'd faded and smoothed out a whole lot. Even in the Kashimo flashback, the stitches were kind of faded a bit. So I do think it's just that. After a while, the bodies just merge. And once the technique is activated and he's fully synced up and the brain stem has reconnected from the new brain to the new body, then I think ultimately, bada bing, bada boom. You got a new fleshy vessel in the room and you're good. So I think that's the third type. And I think that's the most likely, and I think Yuta's going to be fine after the 5 minutes. If I had to hazard a guess. That's just me, though. That's just me. With that being the case, the darkest end would be the first one. But I don't see Gege going against what's been set up in the narrative so far. And I think that's what Gege's done by showing Kenjaku's technique working as it has. If we hadn't seen Kenjaku use a domain expansion and go through technique burnout, if we hadn't seen multiple examples of Kenjaku in bodies for various amounts of time, if we hadn't seen so much, then I'd be more willing to accept the first two. But, I don't. So, I'm thinking we're chill on that. However, we do get to see that... Let me see, who is this? Even if oh yeah, so this is Yuta speaking. I'm not against that as a final option. Even if Rikachan is not fully manifested, I'm able to use my copy ability inside my domain. I'd like to try that first. If I fail there, then I'll take Gojo-sensei's body. And yeah, it's a reasonable plan, right? Because that should be the last resort. Because hypothetically, if anything else but the third one is wrong, Yuta just perishes immediately. But if he can go in a roundabout way first, which is using his domain, which he did try, then he want to do that first. Obviously, Yuta himself doesn't want to disrespect Gojo's body that way, but is using it as a weapon, the one thing Gojo never wanted to be seen as. And that's nice of him. However, we see Maki say, "Quit talking as if it's settled. I don't like one bit of this plan." And here's the thing. I think I can talk about it. You know, we'll get to this little section here first. Let me hit the Yuta voice real quick. In fact, let me take a sip and then I'm going to hit the Yuta voice. Stay hydrated, folks. But, listen, I'm getting pretty ticked off. Huh? No matter how you look at it, it's what we should do. Sure. If we're only focused on the plan, we have to worry about what happens to you as a person too, right? As a person? Do you realize who we're up against? The strongest sorcerer in history, Ryomen Sukuna. If throwing away our humanity gives us a shot at winning, we should throw it away. Does becoming a monster really scare you that badly? Listen, you're extremely important to everyone here. Salmon. What about Gojo-sensei? Is he not important? We've always pushed the burden of being a monster onto him alone. If he dies, one of us will have to take that spot. And if no one else wants to step up, then I will. So, there's this. The idea of humanity becoming a monster and everyone's different opinions on it. One thing I like to highlight. As much slander, as much downplay, as much talk and negativity I and others have given to Akari Kenji in the past, one thing I like is that Gege is not compromising on Akari's established characterization, even if the characterization is confirmed to be established later on in the timeline by Urume, but it's shown as early as the Kashima fight. Akari is not like the other modern sorcerers. Note that his only objection is like, hey, do it if it's the last option. But he doesn't care about Gojo's body or any of the humanities. He's just like, do it if it needs to be done. He doesn't veto the plan unless it's necessary. Or no, he vetoes unless it's literally all they have left. Like, Yuta's going to perish anyway, and they need him back, and they need Gojo's power. He's perfectly fine with that. That I like, because Hakari's long since been established as a person who does not see his life, others' lives, humanity itself, in the same way that the rest of the sorcerers do. He's different. He's a monster. He has that potential to be a calamity. That's what Urume clearly highlights. That's what even Kashimo notes in their battle. He does not care about his life or others. He's kind of just built like that, for real, for real. So I like that Akari's characterization is kept firm just like that, even if this takes place before the Urume fight, where that's openly acknowledged in the narrative. Second, here's the thing. I like it. I was going to get on Maki's case, because notably Maki is another one who, at least I personally believe, has sort of transcended that cares about humanity and monsterhood. But to be fair, in a similar way to Gojo, and by proxy Yuta, she sort of had the monster title foisted upon her. People like Momo were calling her a monster. Naoya was calling her a monster. Sukuna sees her something different, an insult to sorcery. But Maki herself is still innately human. That's why she still cares so much. She's worried not only for Gojo and his respect, but not really. In fact, I'd say she's barely worried about that. She's mainly worried about Boyf, about Yuta, and what that means for him. That's why she's so objected to it. because she still cares. She's still a person who worries for Yuta as a person. And that makes sense. Maki, while she may have transcended humanity and left it behind in the sense that she does not have an ounce of cursed energy, all of it has been scooped out of her system, ultimately she's still human at her core. She's not a monster. Just like Toji, despite having everything scooped out of him, all the cursed energy, all that cursed za, despite having it all scooped out of him, he was not a monster either. He may have tried to be, he may have appeared as such, but just as Maki, well, I wouldn't even say has tried to be, but has definitely appeared as such to others, they're ultimately not monsters. They aren't like Hikari, they aren't like Sukuna, they aren't like Aruma, they aren't like Kenjaku. No, they're still human. Human to their very cores. And that is ultimately why they ended up falling short. Toji fell short to the man who had temporarily became a monster in the awakened Gojo Satoru, and Maki fell short to the man who was a monster from birth, presumably, in Ryomen Sukuna. They both fell to the strongest. It'd be like that? Wouldn't it be like that? Especially, wouldn't it be like that? Because as much and as powerful and as dangerous and as transcendent as they've become, they were not transcendent of their humanity. They still ultimately were people who worry about people, and that held them back. And the one thing I like about this is that even Kusakabe, in his infinite pragmatism, even he finds hesitation in this. Even he wants to hold back on it, because he still sees Yuta and all the kids here as just that. Kids. This is a big part of Kusakabe's chapter earlier when he fought Sukuna. Ultimately, he stood on the front line. He threw his life and everything at Sukuna because he still sees these kids as what they are. Kids with lives to live. Kids who probably shouldn't be fighting in this battle to decide the fate of the very planet. He still sees Yuta as someone whose innocence to some degree needs to be protected despite all Yuta has gone through. And I think that's sweet. But what I also like is that Yuta, to some way, shape, and or form, is taking what Uro said to heart. He was already told that he couldn't become what he needs to be in his mind. He was told that, dude, I see it. You do have the potential in you. You have the raw power. But I've seen it before. Many people like you before. You're still people. You can never rise to what was. Never rise to the King of Curses. You can never become that natural calamity that wipes away everything with disregard for anything in its path. You just don't have that dog in you. Mr. Yuta Okotsu, you just don't got that dog in you. Yuta heard that, and he took it to heart. And ultimately, what I like about this the most is that in spite of his desire and in spite of his ability to see Gojo and hypothetically reach him as the second strongest of the modern day, Yuta still has a fundamental misunderstanding. As he says, we've always pushed the burden of being a monster onto him alone. Gojo Satoru, just like Yuta Okotsu, was never a monster. He may have had a glimpse of it, a teeny tiny bit of it, when he had disregarded everything, when he had just awoken to RCT and was tweaking off his mind. But that was it. After that, Gojo was never a monster. He was a man. A very powerful man. A man with the abilities to be a monster, but ultimately he never was. Just like Yuta Okotsu is a man. A young man with the potential to be a monster, literally wielding a accursed monster and the infinite abilities of what precedes him, but ultimately he's still a man. And it's this willingness to step up and become the monster for everyone else that ultimately keeps him human, at least in my eyes. And it's ultimately what will likely lead to his downfall. He's trying to play at a role. He's trying to become a role. He's trying to do something that he fundamentally isn't. And I think that's where he'll fall short. He's trying to hype everybody up. He's trying to rally behind. He's trying to get the confirmation and support and belief that yes, I can do it. But it's Yuta's innate desire to take the burdens that no one else wants, to become the monster that no one else wants to be, and take that all onto himself that makes him human. He's doing it because no one else can. And because no one else wants to. That doesn't mean he is. That is a difference.
Sukuna threw everything away. Could not care less. Couldn't care about love, none of that. He only was affected and infected by love and care of others by fusing with Yuji. That was it. He never had to rise to the occasion. He was there at the peak of the mountain. Yuta's attempting to rise to the peak of the mountain by becoming Satoru Gojo, but ultimately, Satoru Gojo was never at the peak of the mountain either.
By attempting to replicate the monsterhood of a man who was never a monster, he will fall short, as he will just be a man copying another man. That's why I'm excited for Gojo. I'm very excited. But I think this very moment right here, and what we'll continue to see, is all the more proof that no. Yuta Kotsu, you're a strong kid, with a strong heart, and a deep, caring soul. But that's why you won't reach the king. At least not alone. But, with that being the case, we see it continue. As this is Yuta proposing the idea to everyone, but then very specifically going in to Gojo with the request. And once again, note the humanity here in asking Gojo for consent of this. Asking if it's okay to defile his flesh and wield it as a weapon, as it is. Gojo Satoru is a living weapon, for all intents and purposes. And that, once again, is just a little bit too much of your humanity, Yuta Akotsu. But we see him ask, if you pass, I'd like to take over your body. Hey, why do you sound kind of angry, bruh? Calm down, chill out. And then Yuta's like, wait, you don't mind? And Gojo's like, I'm not gonna lose, so I don't really care. So, that, once again, is only funny in retrospect. Like, if we had seen this first, we'd all be like, oh, okay, look at him, he's not win. But no, like, knowing that now, it just sounds exactly like what Kashima said. Like, Kashima was like, what, you think I'm gonna lose or something? Nah, I'm built like that for real. He was not, in fact, built like that for real. Gojo Satoru was like, oh, I'm not gonna lose, I'm gonna be fine. He did in fact lose. He was not built like that for real. But with that being the case, I do like Gojo's confidence. And I like that, once again, in a similar vein to Sukuna, Gojo Satoru was never a monster in my mind, at least not for any extended period of time, he does hold a similar value to Sukuna. Flashback to the Orozu fight, where Sukuna's like, yo, if I lose, off me. Now! You can do whatever you want with my body, because I'm going to be gone. Like, both of them have fully acknowledged, like, hey, if I don't make it, you can have whatever you want. You can rip out the eyes, you can rip out the lungs, you can donate my liver, you can do whatever. Because I don't really care. I lost. My value's done. Which is appropriate that those two, the few who may have been able to understand each other if they were only a bit closer, yeah, they have that same kind of feeling. The sad yet funny thing about this here, though, is what is said here. What angers me is that Shoko doesn't seem to care at all. And Shoko's like, whatever. And this is twofold. One, I think it plays on the fact that Shoko genuinely had faith in Gojo. She, like Gojo, didn't believe he would lose. Remember, this is before anything had happened. This is contingency plan number, 5. Remember, we had levels on levels on levels on levels on levels of contingencies. From Kashimo to Higuruma to Yuta to Maki to Yuji to Choso to, Miguel. We had contingencies on contingencies. This is plan G. If we're going, in alphabetical order of planning. Obviously, probably not that deep, but still. But Shoko likely had faith. She really properly did have faith in Gojo. And ultimately, that faith seemed to be a little bit misplaced in the strongest sorcerer of today. But also, I think this does play into a fact that was established way back in 220, I do believe, where Shoko acknowledges the fact that Gojo believed himself alone. In spite of their connection, in spite of their bond, since she just wasn't one of the strongest like Geto was with Gojo, at least for a period, Shoko likely believed that, hey, I'm separate from him anyway. He doesn't really care, so why should I? There's the more hopeful aspect of it, which turns to despair, or there's the more despair aspect of it, which turns into more despair. Shoko already felt abandoned by Gojo based on how Gojo low-key abandoned her by seeing himself as alone despite her still being there. And there's just the hope that Shoko believed he would win. It's probably both in combination, though. That's why she probably didn't care too much. But with that being the case, we see that Yuta, now that he's gotten the permission for that, actually decides to ask a couple questions now that there have been questions raised. Oh, by the way, I was told I'm a Fujiwara descendant. Didn't you tell me I was a Sugiwara? Or Sugawara? And Gojo's like, oh, you are. You and I are distant relatives. Weren't the Fujiwaras and Sugiwaras on crazy bad terms? And Yuta's like, oh, well, in that case, I guess Odo-san was just confused. And then Gojo goes with this idea. Or, actually, maybe we're both right. You might have been born even more blessed than me. It'd be pretty lame if you didn't take advantage of it. First things first, take care of your sloppy Kurt's energy control. I've been on you about that, haven't I? And Yuta does let out a little bit of a pout of disgust. And that is something I do like. I like the idea that Yuta has just been brute forcing through everything. Like, there hasn't actually been a thought running through the man's brain. Like, we already got this hinted at when we went with the RCT explanation, where it was asked by Choso, hey, how do you guys regenerate blood? And Akari's like, we ball! And then Yuta was like, we ball! They just genuinely don't know. So Yuta's never been a refinement kind of guy. He's just been a, freestyle. And he's just been prodigying it through. And that does make sense with Yuta's character so far. I do like that. But also, the idea that Yuta was born more blessed than Gojo. It's interesting, because notably, I think outside of Domain, Teen Gojo Awakened does still beat Yuta. But now with Domain in the picture, maybe not. Who knows? It depends on how fast you think that purple is, and how much you think Yuta or Rika could survive that, depending on how quick you think Gojo's going to launch that. But with that being the case, I do find it interesting that Yuta could hypothetically have been born more blessed. And that ultimately he is the true prodigy character, the prodigy to end all prodigies. And the thing I like most about it is that while I've seen the memes of like, this is my JJK fan OC, Akotsu Yuta. His ability is that he has all abilities, and he has infinite cursed energy, and he has a cursed spirit that has infinite cursed energy, and he can take any abilities power ever, because he's the descendant of the two greatest clans ever. Like, don't get me wrong, Yuta definitely sounds like a fanfiction character, but the fact that he still works within the narrative as a character, despite sounding on paper as a fanfiction character, that's quality work, man. Like, describe Yuta in any other context, in any other series, and you'd all have people being like, but then show them Yuta executed, and they'd be like, at least that's how I see it. I really like how Yuta's been executed. And this is a guy who likes characters more than Yuta. Not many characters, but still, I like other characters more than Yuta. But that being the case, that just goes to show you execution versus intention. You can have the weirdest intentions behind a character, and they may sound broken, dumb, stupid, or backwards, but as long as you execute it right, people will love him. Yuta's a fan favorite character, despite on paper sounding atrocious. Like sounding absolute fanfiction supreme. But with that being the case, we see that Gojo tries to isolate himself here. Once again, he tries to leave them all behind, acting like a monster. As he says, you guys can head back. But Maki, a monster in her own right, I know she's still human, says, nope. And Inumaki goes, fish flakes. And Panda speaks Spanish. Hola. Yo no tengo una comprensión de español bueno. Un poquito de español. Yo entiendo más de... I know more. I can understand more than I can speak back in terms of Spanish. I'll be completely honest with y'all. And even then, my Spanish is super duper rusty. Toda de mi experiencia con español es de... Ay, Dios mío. Like, 5 años en la escuela pasado. Even then, I'm not sure if any of that makes sense. All my Spanish viewers just absolutely cook me for that. But with that being the case, the fact that Panda decided to speak it, and the thing is, he's technically saying I also. Yo también is I also. Meaning he's also not going to leave, but like, Panda, why haven't you been eaten by Sukuna yet? Even at this point in the timeline, Sukuna should have just appeared, taken you and eaten you. I swear! But with it being the case, the original 3, or the original 4, one of Gojo's only classes that we've seen him have up to this point, refuse to leave Gojo alone. They won't let him bear the burden of being the monster all by himself. least that's what they believe. They see Gojo's Hanzo as the monster, and they're trying to allow him to be more human. But ultimately, in that way, they're failing to understand Satoru Gojo. And we see that he goes on to say, "Hey, go on now. As fellow sorcerers, I can't order you to leave, but I'd rather not show my students something so gruesome. Especially given the fact that I'm not even sure this is the right thing to do. Even if I lose the Sukuna, as long as everyone in this room is dealt with, Gakuganji will effectively be in charge. If that happens, we won't have to worry about chaos like what happened after Shibuya. Go on, get out of here." And we see that Yuta and his friends declare, "No, we're staying right here." And Gojo, he humps, he rumps, but he's like, "Fine, it's okay." And Yuta says, "Please, don't bear the burden of being a monster alone anymore." And Gojo looks back at them, and he walks into the room. There's nothing that can be done about that. Back then, I was left in the dust. I have to catch up. Unfortunate. So, once again, it goes into the idea of what Gojo was talking about before. Way back in 236, which is now. Jeez! It was like 8 months ago now. Is it 8? September. 8, pushing 9 months. God, we've had like a whole pregnancy without Gojo. But with that being the case, the idea that Gojo mentioned in 236 is that he never really felt like he could connect with people. That they were always viewing him as something. The strongest, a monster, transcendent. But ultimately he was still just a man, yet no one could understand that. Except for the one person who was there while he was still a man in the eyes of many. And the strongest was a duo, not a single man. And ultimately there's another case of that. Yuta, in trying to respect Gojo's humanity and trying to maintain it, is in a way separating Gojo from it. Viewing him as the monster that they don't want to let be alone. Viewing him as something transcendent that they shouldn't leave alone. But in that way, they are, in a way, disrespecting Gojo's humanity. Viewing him as that flower that can never be touched, never be understood, never be spoken to. Just as Gojo viewed his flower. Long, long ago. As Gojo says, he was left in the dust. Changing the world. He could have done it. Just like Geto said he could. But instead of doing it then, he waited years upon years upon years. And now that he's just trying to play catch-up, he doesn't even know if it's the right thing to do. Hey, he has no other choice. And he goes in, and he slaughters every last one of the higher-ups. Which finally does clean up who did it. There was a long-running mystery of who did it, but now we know. The reason we saw Yuta and Inumaki seemingly walking away from this area is because they were there when Gojo did it. But it was Gojo specifically. What a shame. But, now that that's done, we get the reveal of Amai's curse technique. As he reveals that bada bing bada boom, he can take his own blood sugar and then redistribute it into actual things. Sweet creation. Which is actually really neat. Like, I mean, not necessarily too neat, because like you can run out of sugar really fast. As he mentions, oh, it's sort of like amplifying the sugar within my body and manifesting it in some way. I get pretty lightheaded when I use it, though it makes my blood sugar go low. And we see Yuji, my goat, who just like me for real, aka don't tell, well, you can tell me where it comes from and I'll still probably eat it. He says, oh, it's sweet. And we see Nita be like, oh, wow, you're actually digging into that, huh? Hey, don't knock the hustle till you try it, bro. It may be delicious. But we see that Choco's like, oh, wait a minute. Do you think you could transfer that sugar to others? And Amai's like, I mean, I don't see why not. If I can do it into things, I can probably do it into people. And Choco's like, oh, perfect. All right, you'll join the medical team with Nita and myself. You'll be administering sugar to supplement the brain during technique activation. And he's like, all right, got it. Don't overdo it, though. There's no point if they pass out from high blood sugar. So he needs to do a careful balance of giving the sugar, but not overwhelming their system. Kind of like what Gojo did, though admittedly he became addicted to sweets, with his technique in stimulating his own brain with sugar. A perfect balance, as all things should be. But we see that Amai was not necessarily ready for what he would have to deal with as he stands over the body of Yuta Okotsu. Cleanly split in half. Well, not too cleanly. The man's looking a little bit rough. And we see that Nita explains, My technique made it so these wounds won't worsen further, but I can't heal. He got split in two, the same as Gojo-san. This is way beyond Akotsu-san's reverse curse technique capabilities, let alone my techniques. So yeah, this does confirm, it does seem like slicing in half is the limit. Like, we know in other verses you can be sliced in half and regenerate, but it seems like RCT peaks out here. If you're cut in half, you aren't regenerating your whole leg. But you can regenerate limbs. Presumably, if you lost like a leg, and we've seen you can lose an arm and regenerate the whole thing. But it seems like if your upper half is separated from your lower half in any way, shape, or form, you ain't regening that. And Yuta Kotsu is one of the highest level RCT users. Obviously, Gojo Satoru was another one of the highest level RCT users. It's just, it ain't happening. It ain't happening. But with that being the case, we see that Yuta Akotsu is more than prepared for this. And he says, whew, I'm maintaining consciousness thanks to Rika-chan, but I'm reaching my limit here. You mind getting it done and over with? Because I'm gonna do it, Iori-san. It's our only choice. And we see Shoko, once again, slightly disconnected from the whole scenario, but she's ready. And she admits, I've already finished suturing Gojo's body. Once you swap, you'll need to go full throttle on reverse curse technique to finish the treatment. Amai here will back you up on that. And it goes to show. Gojo was pre-prepped, pre-prepared, because presumably Shoko did this immediately after Gojo's body re-arrived, which is unfortunate. It means that a lot of the hypothetical theories of what am I looking for? Big Brain, Urahime, and Shoko, or Urahime boosting Shoko's RCT output to try and heal Gojo, try and bring him back, even though he was split in half. It likely didn't happen at all. Nah, they just immediately moved on to this. They didn't even try to save him, which, hey, makes sense. He was literally cut in half. But with that being the case, we see that Yuta even apologizes. Once again, showing his humanity, his weakness. Yuta apologizes to Rika. I'm sorry I had to move you to my right, because his left arm was literally chopped off. His ring hand was removed. But he was able to do it in the last second. Show and restore his connection to his right hand. Yuta, my sweet little human boy. What a shame, what a shame, what a shame that you must leave your own body for the body of the man you trusted with your very life. But we see that the two strongest, the strongest in history and the new strongest of today, waste no time. They immediately go for domain expansion. Band for band, bar for bar. And we see that the narrator questions, how does one counter Ryomen Sukuna's open barrier domain? By Gojo Satoru's hands, the solution is revealed yet again. Unlimited Void versus Malevolent Shrine. The two are about to go band for band. And obviously, if you don't remember, Gojo's solution was to shrink the domain down a whole bunch. I don't think Yuta himself has unlocked an open barrier domain, but he has unlocked Unlimited Void by being in Gojo's body and having all of his experiences and memories. So he's likely going to go for Small Ball. Small Ball to fight Big Ball. And to overwhelm Sukuna in the domain clash. Now, there is a question raised by the end of this chapter. If he's going Small Ball, what's up with these two fine gentlemen, Todo and Yuji? Well, they do seem to get sidelined this chapter. The fact that Todo doesn't even get a word to say this chapter, or even any internal monologue, and Yuji literally gets punched away. Question is, are they involved in the domain clash? Because, remember, Yuta Kotsu is one of the few, it's him and Dagon, I do believe, they're one of the few that can target individuals with their sure hit. Does that mean that Yuta could welcome them in to the domain to create a three-way jumping scenario? Because with that being the case, it would allow Goda a lot easier access to bullying Sukuna. But at the same time, we could run into the same issue whereas before, where if Yuta tries to individually target Sukuna with his sure hit, then there's going to be nothing stopping Sukuna's sure hit from targeting Todo and Yuji. But at the same time, if the sure hit simply targets everything that has a soul,
on both cases, physically for cleave and dismantle and stuff like that for Sukuna's domain and limited void share hit, will they cancel out on Todo and Yuji if they get trapped in the domain? I don't know. It could get creative. It could get devious. It could get dark. It could get dastardly. And that's the thing. Gojo should win. He should. Unless something goes wrong. That's the thing. But this is where the chapter ends. And I do want to talk more in depth about the hypothetical Gojo jumping situation in its own video, because this video's been going on for a hot minute now. And I do want to talk about the hypothetical potential of the gap widening between Sukuna and Gojo, and Gojo and Sukuna, depending on how this battle goes. But ultimately, if you could not tell by how Depot is yapping and how much I love the characterization in this chapter and the reaffirmation of characterization, or the change of characterization and the hypothetical implications of humanity versus monsterhood, yeah, this chapter is worthy. Absolutely, this chapter is worthy. I love the character work primarily. Obviously, the reveal that this is Gojo using everything in his power, or Yuta using everything at his disposal to challenge Sukuna again, using the body of the strongest. Beautiful. The contrast and honest hype behind Sukuna for this battle of the strongest being run back. Beautiful. The further characterization and clarification of Maki's mentality and Hikari's mentality, beautiful. Shoku's mentality, beautiful. Kusakabe, everything in this chapter is fantastic. I really, really like it. I'm going to talk more in depth about the twist itself when I have more time in another video. I'm going to talk about the implications of the twist, the hypothetical jumpings, the lack of jumpings, what this could mean, what this couldn't mean, so much more for other videos. But now, I'd like to thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video, if you somehow did. And if you did, please leave Brain Blast. Leave Brain Blast in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the 20-minute live reaction to this very chapter, ad variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is the fact that I do have a Ko-Fi in the description down below where you can drop 5 beats for a short video, 25 beats for a long video, but also any support would be appreciated at all. But now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members who Recliner Plays, Greyhound, Akids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, King Sukuna, NMA, Real Rare, Paris Arnold, and G Prosper. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons, Steron, Sean, Sammy, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin, Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and A+A. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 patrons, Autumn Mornings Lazo, and Fine. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members, Robbie Uchiha and Jay Warrior. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Metal Solid Crisis, Joaquin Munoz, and Joaquin Munoz, along with Idemokami. And I'd like to give a final gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.